Now, you may be wondering why USACE is putting on this webinar for the New Mexico 50-year water plan. And so I want to say that I'm Sarah Moore. I'm with the Army Corps of Engineers out of the Albuquerque district, where I'm a planner. And USACE is acting as a partner with the state through the authority that's known as Planning Assistance to the States. Under this authority, which is provided by Section 22 of the Water Resources and Development Act, the Corps of Engineers can provide states, local governments, other non-federal entities, and eligible Native American Indian tribes assistance in the preparation of plans for the development, utilization, and conservation of water and related land resources. So typical studies are at the planning level, like the New Mexico 50-year water plan, and they don't include detailed designs for construction or project construction. So the program can encompass many types of studies dealing with water resource issues, and that can include, let's see, water conservation, dam safety, environmental conservation, wetland research, or wetland conservation, excuse me, and restoration projects, anything like that. So if you think you have a project that could fit under planning assistance to the state's authority, don't hesitate to reach out to the Army Corps of Engineers Albuquerque district, and Mark Doles will be putting his contact information into the chat, and you can reach out to him to do that. So as people are still introducing themselves in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Hannah at the Interstate Stream Commission, and she's going to give more information on the New Mexico 50-year water plan. This will be brief because I know there's been a lot of presentations on it, and Hannah, I can operate the slides for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. And I also just want to say what a pleasure it's been working with everyone at U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Mark, and the rest of your team. And I also am thankful and grateful there's so many people on today. It's exciting to see the participation that we have this morning. So just briefly, for those of you maybe who weren't on all of our webinars related to resilience in the 5 water use sectors, I want to just provide a little bit of information on what we're trying to do here. So the New Mexico 50-year water plan is really focused on helping New Mexico and New Mexicans prepare for climate change. And this is different in a way than any other water plan that we've conducted in the past. So as you all know, we do support regions and regional water planning. And we also have a state water plan that was last updated in 2018. It will be updated again in 2023. What's different here is that we're really focused specifically on climate change. And so the plan is intended to be sort of an executive summary level document, not too long, but something that decision makers, legislators, others could pick up quickly and get a real sense of what we're confronting here. So part of the plan will focus on current science. So what does the current peer-reviewed science say about what the impacts of climate change will be to New Mexico's water resources? And then to identify where we're most vulnerable or where there's examples of resilience that could be learned from and replicated elsewhere. And then the plan will also make recommendations for what it is that we need to do to improve our resilience. And this is where I really think clearly the challenges that we are going to be confronting with climate change are something that can't be addressed by any single entity, no single agency, no single irrigation district. This is an all hands on deck effort. And so what we're trying to do here is get all the smart people involved to the table to help plan together of what we're going to do regarding the challenges ahead. And you can go to the next slide, Sarah. And so as I mentioned earlier, there's a couple of different ways of examining resilience. One of them would be to look at resilience in different water use sectors or different components of the state that depend on water resources. And that's what we just did through a series of webinars that are recorded and are on our website. And they're focused on the 5 sectors that we've outlined that are listed here on this slide. again, as part of that, we have some surveys as well that we encourage you to participate on. Those will be on our website through November 30th. But another way to look at evaluating resilience in New Mexico isn't by use sector, but is by region. And so that's what Army Corps has really done with these webinars this week, today, later this afternoon, and on Friday, is to look at how New Mexico may respond in different climatic regions. And so Sarah's going to get into that in more detail, and we're very excited that they've looked at this carefully and are sharing that information with you all this week. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then just to sort of let you know where we are in this process. So this has been a fairly compressed time frame with fairly limited resources to pull off this 50-year water plan. Another reason why it's critical to have all of the partners that we've had working on this, not only Army Corps, but also WRRI, for those of you who participated last week. Various state agencies have chipped in, including Indian Affairs Department with Tribal Outreach. Also, Water Dialogue's been a major player, and others. So we're including the New Mexico Bureau of Geology and Mineral Resources. We spent much of the beginning of this year working with them. They convened an expert panel of scientists that have decades of experience evaluating New Mexico's landscapes, especially related to water resources. They produced what we call the Leap Ahead report. That is the science foundation of the 50-year water plan. It's what we're, basing the rest of the plan on in large part. And so that report is on our website. We encourage you to look at it. We then transitioned into looking at resilience, as I mentioned a moment ago, and that this webinar today is part of that, but also part of the transition into collecting input on adaptation strategies and other recommendations, which is what's coming up intensively over the next few months. Next slide. And then this is my last slide here, just to encourage you all to continue to stay engaged. So this week, as we've mentioned, are these workshops organized by Army Corps, and thank you all so much for that. There will be a state tribal water forum later in November. And then please stay tuned to our website. And if you get emails from us, or if you'd like to get emails, on the bottom right-hand corner of this slide, there's an email address that you can send a message to if you want to be included on our email list. We will be scheduling other opportunities to provide input related to recommendations for the 50-year water plan over the next couple of months. And so stay tuned for that. And then the last opportunity to really provide input to this plan will be the January Water Dialogue annual meeting. That's January 12th and 13th. And there's information on this slide as well for how to register for that. We really encourage you to do that. And then, as Sarah mentioned earlier, there's a ton of information on our website, including recordings of various webinars, which we'll have, in addition, these webinars from this week posted as well. So if you think others that missed today and would like to hear it, please look there for information. And there will be in case you missed it, recordings section of our website. And I think with that, I'll hand it back to Sarah. Thank you so much for all your work pulling this together.
Thanks, Hannah. And I put the New Mexico 50-year water plan website in the chat for easy access for anyone who wants to visit that. Okay, so I know there's been a lot of presentations covering this topic, but in case this is anyone's first time joining a New Mexico 50-year water plan presentation, we're going to start with a brief overview of climate change in New Mexico. So the ISC has held many webinars over the past few months, and this is a summary slide from those presentations that discuss sort of the big overview climate change items across New Mexico. The final bullet on this slide says that different regions of New Mexico will experience different impacts, and that's what we're here to discuss today. So for the purposes of the Leap Ahead report and then for the New Mexico 50-year water plan, New Mexico has been divided into 4 physiographic regions based on projected climate change and associated effects on hydrology. So these 4 regions are defined by a combination of both latitude and topography, and you can see them here on this slide. the high mountains, the northwestern high desert, the Rio Grande Valley Basin and Range, and the eastern plains. These regions represent a simplification of 8 climate divisions that were defined by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, better known as NOAA. And when the authors of the Leap Ahead report were discussing anticipated responses to climate change in the 8 smaller regions, they were repeating themselves a lot. So to reduce this repetition, the regions were combined and simplified to the 4 regions you see here. Obviously, there are microclimates in each of these regions that are going to have basically their more or less extreme responses to climate change, but overall, the trend is going to be in the same direction as the rest of the region. So we're here to discuss the high mountains, or climatic region 1. So climatic region 1, highlighted in yellow on the maps, is high elevation areas where snowpack accumulates over the winter and generates snowmelt runoff in the spring. You can see the mountains included, the major cities, tribal lands, all outlined on this slide. So in New Mexico, temperatures have already risen by more than 2 degrees Fahrenheit in the past 50 years. And on that same note, the freeze-free season, or the growing season, which is the time between the last frost in the spring and the first frost in the fall, that's approximately 2 weeks longer on average now than it was in the 60s and 70s. So if you've noticed a difference with your garden, that's what's going on. If we look at a future climate change models, we see different emission scenarios represented, like on this image. Emission scenarios are possible pathways that society may take in the emission of greenhouse gases into the future. So when we look at temperature, model projections indicate that surface temperatures in New Mexico will warm substantially over the 21st century. And those largest increases will be seen in the northwestern part of the state. So overall, this projected temperature increase will look something like the climate of Albuquerque at the end of the 21st century, being similar to 20th century climate of El Paso. So both locations receive the same amount of precipitation, but El Paso is considerably warmer. So you can think about this in terms of ecosystems. You can compare the vegetation that's growing now in the Sandia Mountains near Albuquerque with what grows in the Franklin Mountains outside of El Paso. So that's a good idea of how much the temperature is going to change. So as temperatures increase across the state, they're going to have cascading effects. For example, warming temperatures are expected to reduce the accumulation of snow during the winter and the availability of snowpack to sustain snowmelt runoff in the spring. Additionally, there's already a consensus that an earlier onset of snowmelt-driven stream flow has already been observed in the Rio Grande Basin. So if you see the figure on the bottom left, what you're seeing is a time series of snowpack in the headwaters of the Rio Grande, and together with the annual stream flow. This gauge that's measuring that stream flow occurs where the river leaves the San Juan Mountains and it flows into the San Luis Valley in southern Colorado. And that's just upstream of where there's large diversions that supply water for irrigated agriculture. So this April 1st date that's shown on here has typically been the, excuse me, has historically been representative of a maximum snowpack. And looking at the figure, we see that snowpack, which is at the top of the graph with the green line, on April 1st, it varies a lot from year to year. That variability is associated with the precipitation fluctuations. But overall, snowpack on April 1st exhibits a long-term downward trend since the 1960s. If we look at this figure on the right, based on research from the Nature Conservancy, we can see a prediction of the change in timing each year of when peak snowmelt runoff occurs. And this is at the Huck 2 watershed level, so large watersheds. The change in peak snowmelt timing of up to 3 weeks earlier is predicted across a large portion of the state, and that's that darkest pink shade. I've highlighted region 1 with yellow circles, and you can see that the dark pink shade, again, which designates that earlier snowmelt by 3 weeks, that covers most of this region. Rivers that depend on this snowmelt will see peak snowmelt timing change to earlier in the year and also have less. Let's think about how that will impact irrigation, fish spawning, flood control, not only in the high mountains regions, but also downstream. So let's discuss precipitation really quick. Despite recent drought years, New Mexico's historic precipitation trends are highly variable. Even when considering seasonality, there have been no significant historic trends in precipitation. In New Mexico, precipitation is highly influenced by the natural fluctuations of like the Pacific Ocean temperature, like the El Nino cycle, and land surface heating during the summer. So we all know the importance of the North American monsoon season and how it brings much needed rain to this region. However, in New Mexico, what drives that strength and intensity of the monsoon precipitation, that's not well understood. It's been widely documented around the world, and this is really important to note. It's been documented around the world that increases in atmospheric temperature have resulted in increases in extreme rainfall events. But again, how this affects the North American monsoon region, that's not well understood. If we look at model projections for precipitation on an annual statewide basis, we do not find a clear and significant trend in future precipitation. However, if you look at this figure and we look at projections by seasonality, we begin to see trends in future precipitation. So when we look at this figure, the darker green is increasing precipitation and the darker brown is decreasing precipitation. In winter frontal systems, which is shown in the top left quadrant, moving eastward off the Pacific Ocean, they tend to track further north on average. So the southern part of the state exhibits a tendency towards less precipitation, and the northern mountains tend to receive more precipitation. So it's important to note that even if there's more winter precipitation in the north, due to increasing temperatures, more precipitation will fall as rain than as snow compared to historic precipitation events. The spring season is shown on the top right image, and that exhibits a general statewide drying trend. And for much of the state, spring is already the driest season of the year. So the trend toward less spring precipitation combined with hotter temperatures represents a clear trend towards aridity, increased aridity across the state. Summer precipitation shown in the lower left quadrant, that includes a trend towards stronger monsoon precipitation in the southwestern corner of the state, combined with a trend towards less precipitation in the northeast. The reason why the northeast is receiving less is part of a more general geographical trend towards drier summers just in Central America throughout. And again, that trend in autumn is small, and that's in the bottom right quadrant. There's some tendency for increasing precipitation in the southwest, and this is coming from a trend toward that spring dryness and autumn wetness, which is from the monsoon season actually shifting towards later dates, both in terms of its beginning and its end. So the northern mountain region of New Mexico, which includes the Jemez Mountains, are projected to receive more winter precipitation, offset by less precipitation in the spring. The amounts remaining similar in the summer and autumn. And this is all subject to year and decadal scale natural variability. In contrast, we can see that the south or southern mountains, southwestern mountains, those are all projected to receive less winter precipitation, but relatively more in the summer and the autumn. The location of precipitation on the mountains may also change and vary based on atmospheric circulation patterns changing and varying. For a climate as arid as New Mexico's, two flows strongly dominate the water budget. That's precipitation, which we just discussed, and evapotranspiration. The image on the slide is showing that average annual water budget for New Mexico. And the numbers show the amount of water and are in millions of acre feet per year. The evapotranspiration has been divided into evaporation and transpiration in the image. So temperature plays a big role in both evaporation and transpiration. So as temperature increases, evaporation increases because there's a higher amount of energy available to convert liquid water to water vapor. As transpiration, as temperature increases, transpiration increases because of warmer temperatures. The plants are able to open up their stomata and release more water vapor. So overall, the warming temperatures will cause the growing season to be longer and further increase evapotranspiration from our plants having to release more water vapor. So looking at increasing temperatures across the state, we know that evapotranspiration will increase across New Mexico. And the map on the slide is showing the change in potential evapotranspiration across New Mexico. And this is by mid-century compared to the late 20th century. And potential evaporation or evapotranspiration is a measure of how much water would evaporate over a large area that's covered with uniform vegetation. There's unlimited water available. So the estimate of changes in potential evapotranspiration are driven by temperature and precipitation changes already discussed. And they suggest that the average annual value of potential evapotranspiration will be 3 to 9 inches higher by mid-century relative to late 20th century values. Now, because potential evapotranspiration rates are high and they're going to get higher as temperature increases, evapotranspiration will increase, offsetting any possible precipitation increases. Therefore, available water resources and soil moisture levels are projected to decline over the 21st century and beyond. All of this is going to be leading to increased aridity and soil moisture loss across the state. And with drier soils, there's going to be more dust. And we've already talked about snowpack sort of having an uphill battle in climate change, but dust is extra detrimental to snowpack because instead of snow being white and reflecting the sun, it gets covered in dust, making it a darker color and absorbing the sun's energy and accelerating snowmelt. So the highest elevations are very likely to experience sharp declines in snowpack, which will melt earlier and generate less snowmelt runoff. Less snowmelt? Oh,
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So would that be an increase in albedo or a decrease in albedo because of the dust? I always forget like whether albedo is the reflectance or the lack of reflectance. Do you know offhand?
It's reflected.
It's reflected. I just heard somebody else say.
So it decreased the albedo, right?
Yes. So it's no longer reflecting the sun off, it's absorbing the sun's energy.
Yeah. Which is decreased albedo. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So less snowmelt and less snowmelt and higher evapotranspiration rates are going to lead to proportionally less water available to recharge aquifers and to support plant growth. This loss of plant communities in mountainous terrains as a result of these higher temperatures, that's going to impact the stability of the local soils, which may be completely lost from south-facing slopes. South-facing and even west or northwest-facing slopes, they may evolve towards just becoming bare bedrock, and that again can reduce infiltration of rainwater into local aquifers. Reduced infiltration into aquifers and increasing evapotranspiration and temperature, that's going to lead to further plant, especially our trees, stress, and can increase disease and beetle kill. And we're already seeing results of that in our high elevation locations. All these factors, increasing temps, reduced soil moisture, abundant fuel source, that's going to increase our wildfire conditions, especially in our high mountain regions. I do want to touch on that increase in wildfires and what that can do to our landscape in the high mountains, because it really has cascading impacts to the rest of the downstream areas. But post-wildfire, there's an increased risk for erosion of material, debris flows, and floods. So wildfire enhanced floods, they tend to initiate in these steep upstream hill slopes, progress downstream in pulses and waves, and they carry large amounts of sediment in the process. So all these soils that are already negatively impacted by increasing temperatures can be stripped off hill slopes in this process, leading to even more dramatic flood events due to the unimpeded flow over land. Also, soils that have been impacted by wildfires, they reduce infiltration of water to local aquifers. And so this climate-related landscape changes, especially after a wildfire, they tend to remain active for years or even decades as the landscape continues to adjust until it reaches a new steady state, and that can take quite a while. These maps were taken directly from the 2020 New Mexico Forest Action Plan, which is a really helpful document to take a look at. And they're showing the flash flood production index on the left and the erosion susceptibility on the right. And as you can see, region 1, of course, lights up in red on both maps just because of the steep slopes and the nature of the high mountains. Okay, so this is where I want for us to be able to come off mute and have a bit of a discussion and use the chat. I know there's already been a few questions and comments back and forth to discussing things. And I apologize if I didn't see the questions, all of them as they were coming in. But I want us to talk about what this means for the human connection with water in the high mountains. And a part of this is I'm going to put up a summary slide of everything I've gone over. Which is in this summary slide here. And I want us to have that conversation now, and it can be in the chat. Melinda's already added something there. You can also come off mute. If you're on your phone, don't forget you may be double muted. I'll go ahead and start with one of the things that I think about with that reduced snowpack, and I think that it doesn't really cross many people's mind, is that it really changes the livelihoods of the snow recreation season and really is detrimental to that whole industry for the high mountains as far as the snow recreation season impacting tourism, livelihoods, things like that. And then also that change in the growing season. I notice it with my gardens. And I haven't been around since the 60s. So thanks, Dana, for putting that in the chat. The Chusca Mountain area is considered to be in region 1. Let me see. If anyone knows that answer right off the top of their heads.
Hi, this is
Yeah,
Melinda.
go ahead.
It's just that region right there in near the Four Corners, just south. It's like it's a small mountain region, but here on the Navajo Nation, it's one of the only areas that we actually do receive snow melt runoff. So I'm just curious why it was. It's not a big area, but to us, it's our big area.
Yeah, and I will say that that region of the state where you're talking about is actually going to experience the largest temperature increases compared to the rest of the state. So that is, we've already talked about, is just detrimental to snowpack. And then that region 2 is also going to have so much dust just from increasing aridity. So again, which will be really hard on snowpack. So I know it's not included in this region, but you can definitely think about the impacts in the same way as what we just discussed. Yeah, Kitty, that's a good question. An invasive species program underway to remove non-native trees that impact water supplies. Let's see if anyone wants to come off mute and discuss that. Dana, I know that you may have some responses to that.
Hi, this is Joe Zabrowski with the New Mexico Forest and Watershed Restoration Institute. And there are a number of different programs that agencies and private landowners are or can participate in to address non-native vegetation through your soil water conservation districts, NRCS for private landowners, and the federal agencies and state agencies also have various programs that address that, including New Mexico State Forestry.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And if you want to add any links to that in the chat, that would be great. People can get to them easily there. Let's see here. I see that there's a question about a community or town council not being aware of the dire climatic predictions. I think that's why we wanted to do these webinars that were climatic region specific, because we want for both citizens and members of town councils and things like that to understand what's coming their way. And that is also a big part of the New Mexico 50-year water plan, is helping get that message out to communities so that they can start becoming more water resilient in a changing future. Hannah, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I was just going to echo, I think, what you just said, in that, you know, that's why, as I said earlier, we're hoping that the 50-year water plan can be used by all of you to take to those that you think need to be educated about these issues. And it's also why we're trying to not make it a huge, 200-page long document. I think the appendix will be quite long. It will include the Leap Ahead report and a bunch of other materials as well. But we're hoping that the plan itself will be fairly concise so that decision makers could look at it and in a snapshot see what it is that we're confronting in a way that really kicks us into action. So, and the plan is for this plan to be finalized early next year, March or April of next year. So hopefully you'll have that soon. And also, you could encourage them to listen to these webinars, which will be recorded and posted on the Interstate Stream Commission's website.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, so thanks for the clarity there. Are there, in that document, will there be discrete suggestions or recommendations made? Right, I have it. I guess it's recognized that knee-jerk reactions are often the response in circumstances like this, but like an actual directed effort is more impactful. And so, will there be discrete asks or recommendations from the group to regional regulators or even local officials?
Yes, absolutely. So the plan will have recommendations for future actions, and that's what we're just sort of transitioning into, collecting input from the public on that through over the next couple of months and through the Water Dialogue January meeting. And as I mentioned earlier, there'll be opportunities both on our website and potentially some webinars that we'll schedule, because we want to hear from you all about that. But then obviously, we have thoughts as well, and our partners working on this project have thoughts as well. So there will be certainly recommendations in the 50-year water plan for action.
There's a comment in here, a little aquifer storage can help with water supplies, but it will not help with wildfire issues. That's a good point. And then there's a question of what proportion of the Rio Grande and San Juan River inflows come from the San Juan Mountains in southern Colorado, and how will snowpack be affected there? I don't know the exact numbers. I'm sure that someone on the call probably does, but I do know that snowpack in that region of southern Colorado is experiencing the same declines as our northern mountains, northern high regions are. I know that all of my images in the presentation end at the New Mexico border, but of course, Mother Nature doesn't know about borders. So the same impacts are occurring in the southern Colorado mountains, and there's substantial research tracking snowpack that shows the same trends.
Yes, we're expecting a decline in snowpack and earlier thaws. Everything is the same in Colorado. Rio Grande
Thank you
is
for
in
thank you for that.
This this is Kitty Clemens. I wanted to I lived in Southern Colorado, and 20 years ago I had restrictions on what I could use water for outdoors. And right now, when I walk to work, I see sprinkler systems still going every single morning, and they went all summer long, even during the monsoons. Isn't there something that can be a statewide guidance or something? I mean, if we don't take the water out of the ground right now to grow bluegrass, there'll be more there later when we need more, right? Or am I wrong?
I can respond to that if you want, Sarah. So Kitty, yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, I think your concern is well founded, and that's again where, you know, it's critical that folks talk to their elected representatives. If you want, you know, at this point, those types of, you know, water use are regulated at the local level. So, you know, talk to your local municipality or water purveyor. For anything that would be statewide, that would obviously be your state rep.
life is complicated.
I
by
think
the-
there's an incentive. I think there's an incentive for whoever owns the
There is the
water
Rio Grande Compact,
to
which
make money.
requires that a certain amount of the water that appears in the headwaters of the Rio Grande and its tributaries is required to be delivered to New Mexico, the border of New Mexico. New Mexico, in turn, is required to deliver a certain portion of that to Elephant Butte Reservoir, which is the water source for southern New Mexico, Texas, and Mexico. It's all by treaty and compact that restricts kind of what you can do with it.
I just want to call on Governor Mitchell has their hand up right now if they want to come off mute.
Good morning. Thank you for
Good morning.
having this presentation webinar. I'm located in the north central New Mexico, and we here at the Pueblo depend on snowfall surface flow. But as we've all seen in the past, or this year anyways, that never occurred. Also, we've been noticing the aquifer has not been recharging the way it's supposed to recharge. So I'm glad we're talking and addressing all these issues, but as mentioned earlier in different arenas, we've been in climate change for the past 20 to 30 years now. And I think it will behoove us to really look at the capacity holding in general, meaning development and other things, because it's going to take additional waters to do that. Clean water that we have right now for all of us, we need to make sure that you know, the system is clean to either discharge down the Rio Grande for the southern part of the state users. We'll have to understand that some of the tribal governments do have their own water quality standards that we have to adhere to. That we're discharging things down the river along the Rio Grande or into the Rio Grande. And for all points necessary, again, in the high mountain ranges, we've noticed a lot of springs and other things drying up, and the demand for use of aquifer is, I think, there's ways that we can do this. However, somebody was saying earlier, restrictions, they only work if we adhere to them. They don't work if people don't adhere to them. So I think the discussion for this discussion's purpose is also understanding that piece. We live in a unique state where a lot of folks that are wanting to do certain things, and we just want to have to make sure that we adhere to everything that we're trying to do and make sure that there's a government to government, tribal government, state government, county government, there's that piece that's missing too. Just for your all's information, I was on the line with the city of Santa Fe yesterday or last night, and in that arena too, they're talking about water and how do they discharge the water usage through their system there. And that was one of the main concerns is, what about the folks downstream? What about the aquifer if we're using X amount of water, per person? So I bring these things to you also, hoping that we all understand that it's very complex, but I think if we all chime in together and come up with a solution, work for us. But if we continue to, name out the problems, my feeling is, how do we arrive at a productive meeting, and at the end of the day, how do we figure out this water shortage, being that this is part of human race's issue, and we're finally seeing it now. Worldwide issues are happening, and in our little piece of the world here, we're looking at how do we correct our issues going forward. So those are my thoughts, and I hope that the organizers do reach out to the tribal government as well as other governments so that we can all chime in on this again. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I think that leads us into to really a portion of the conversation that I think all of us want to get to, which is how can we increase this water resilience in these high mountain regions and across New Mexico. This is a time period where it's really like a brainstorming activity. We can rely on the ISC to write this report, but that's only a few people in a room. Whereas if we can get the masses to respond and with their ideas and what are you already doing in your communities to increase water resilience, that's what we want to know and get out there and get as many ideas as we can together. So we're using these webinars to try and to gather that piece of the information as well, which is how are communities already increasing water resilience in the high mountains and then in the other regions as we discuss those throughout the week. A part of that, and I apologize, I know there's a lot of questions and comments going on in the chat right now. And I really recommend that you use the ISC's email that we can put up. Hannah, if you can put that in the chat, the email, if you have questions, please email the ISC. They're monitoring that email and responding back as quickly as they can to questions. But this particular one, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sarah, this is Mark. If, once you get to a place where we want to have some of the discussions, I'm tracking some of the conversations and questions. We can bring them back up if we have time. Over.
Okay, great. I just want to cover before we lose anyone else that we are focused on water resilience, and we want to hear from the people that live in these regions and region specific, and you can take the Climatic Region Survey, and it's extremely short. All that's required is your zip code down here. You can see that. And then it's 8 questions. And this big one is the, if you're already practicing water resilience or you're involved in water resilience projects in your region, we want to hear about what those are and what's going on with that. And I'm going to put the link to get to the survey is in the chat. And this is just a part of us gathering that information as best as we can and hearing everyone's voices for this New Mexico 50-year water plan. I'm going to take us back to a map of the region so that we can have that up. And if we want to continue having conversation, because again, I wanted to be cognizant of people's time. If we want to continue having conversation, I think we can now. And go ahead.
So we had a question from Emily, wondering about the 50-year water plan, if it's going to address resilience in worst case scenarios versus proactive push to provide recommendations on actions. And I think the answer, Hannah can weigh in, but the answer is the 50-year water plan is intended to do both. And then also the New Mexico water plan, the next update is due in 2023, which will probably dig into more specifics of that, building on those items that were already presented in the 2018 water plan. But maybe Hannah, you can elaborate.
That's correct. Thanks, Mark, for that answer. And I think that, you know, it's the information coming from the climate expert panel is pretty bleak and dire. And so, you know, this report will be, though, a call to action based on that. Mm-hmm. So, you know, here's what we're confronting, and here are some things that need to happen. And that's where I tried to respond to a number of. There's been a lot of action in the chat, which is great. And I tried to just respond to some of that now, but certainly that's where we're looking for recommendations from you all, and to help us prioritize collectively where we as a state need to focus our energy in order to address these challenges. I should also say, because there's been a fair amount of activity in the chat about emissions and population, this report you know, is focused on climate change and will call out the causes of that, but is really going to be focused on water resources specifically and what needs to be done to increase our resilience there. And maybe just another thing to comment on from the chat, there was something on cloud seeding. You know, obviously we think that can be one thing that could be hopeful, but needs to be one of many tools that we apply simultaneously. And also I should encourage you all, we've been doing a lot of thinking about this, you know, in the responses we've received so far in our resilience assessment survey, there's always a lot of excitement about looking for additional supply, right? And that may be part of what we need to do here, but a big part of what we're going to need to do is look at how we reduce what we need too. So encouraging you all to be thoughtful about that as well.
Thanks, Hannah. There was a comment also regarding the information that's presented here about a slight increase in precipitation, and then also the decreases in snowpack due to evaporation. It should be made clear that any increases in precipitation are very minor and would not offset any of the losses from evaporation for snowpack. That will certainly be one of the primary and most impactful, I guess, consequences of the warmer climate and warmer atmosphere, is the loss of that snowpack.
Thank you for that clarification, Mark. Toner Mitchell has a comment about winter recreation in the context of reduced snowfall. We should also be concerned about summer recreation on rivers. There isn't a chapter in the Leap Ahead report on rivers, and that's a deficiency that should be addressed in this plan if it's to have any weight with policymakers. Hannah, do you want to comment on that?
So Toner, thanks for that comment. and I'm glad to be able to report to all of you. We did, in the feedback that we and the New Mexico Bureau of Geology and Mineral Resources received related to the Leap Ahead report, heard from you and others about that deficiency. And so we're actually in the process right now. It's not sure yet, but we're working on a follow-up to the Leap Ahead, sort of an additional chapter that wouldn't be added to the Leap Ahead itself, but that could follow on to that and be included along with it, that would really look to the Leap Ahead, the information in the Leap Ahead, but speak more specifically to impact on rivers. And so we've heard that feedback, and that is in process, and we'll continue to keep you all posted on that.
I also, thank you, Hannah, want to point out that I think it's Christine has shared in the chat the New Mexico healthysoils.org. That's a method of improving soil health to improve soil moisture retention. So that's a resource to go to look at, because our soil moisture is going to be a big part of future impacts, not only in the high mountains, but downstream. And I'm just scrolling through to make sure I haven't missed anything we haven't looked at yet. Thank you for that comment, Dorothy. I agree. Everyone in New Mexico needs to be on board with these water plans. And let's see, Mark, do you see anything else we need to?
Hey, Sarah, the
yeah,
comment that Nat just posted about their acequia experiencing after effects from fire, and also there was a question towards the end of that comment about beavers, and oh man, I might be mixing my comments here.
I see that.
Yeah. That's a beaver ponds, beaver restoration is a really effective way to recreate wetlands and help with the infiltration. So thanks for that comment.
Thank you.
Thank you to Elena, who has put in quite a bit of information there at the last comment. And Paul, better education at the beginning. That's something that you can definitely talk about to your local school boards, is having water resilience as a part of outreach events. And I apologize, can you please put up the increase decrease graphic again? David, I apologize, I don't know which, there you go. And David, these presentations have been recorded and they will be on the ISC's website.
And then also, Sarah, I put in the chat the public comment portal on the ISC's website. So if you want to join the email list, you can send us an email to the email that I put in the chat. If you're wanting to provide comment related to 50-year water plan, please use that comment portal, which you can also easily find. It's on the main page of the 50-year water plan page on Interstate Stream Commission's website, but it's also in the chat.
And there was also a question, I do want to clarify, I don't remember who asked it, about why USACE was authoring the New Mexico 50-year water plan. And I want to clarify that USACE, the Army Corps of Engineers, is not authoring the New Mexico 50-year water plan. We are acting as a partner with the Interstate Stream Commission, and we are helping them out through various methods like doing these outreach events. And we are co-authoring some climate change chapters in the whole report. So I think that's a clear, needs to be clarified, that the Interstate Stream Commission is authoring the New Mexico 50-year water plan, and through the planning assistance to the states, the Army Corps of Engineers is helping out. And Rolf actually responded to that as well.
Thank you both.
We had a really great turnout today. Thank you so much for the dialogue and everyone that got on and put comments in the chat. I don't want you, I do want you to understand that this was recorded. The Army Corps of Engineers will be putting together an after action report on this, and everything in the chat, everything that was discussed will be written down and will be a part of the New Mexico 50-year water plans, both planning and just the overall conversation in the document. So we are keeping up with this. It's important, and we really appreciate you joining us today. And Hannah, I'll let you say any closing comments.
Just to echo what you said, Sarah, it's good to see so many people on and caring about this issue. And we'll hope that you will continue to stay engaged in the 50-year plan process over the next few months, and then stay engaged in terms of taking action related to the recommendations of the report after it's complete. So it's a critical time for us all to come together to work on these issues. And thanks so much.
Thank you again, everyone. Turn those beats off for the next meeting.
Yeah.
We have to do that apparently before we start the meeting.
A lot of beep. 100 and
A lot of participation. That's wonderful.
it was great. I forgot to keep looking at the participants list, but it was at least up in the 130s at one point.
Yes.
Yeah, it'll be good to hear the recording because I was trying to kind of look at what was in the chat, and so I wasn't always focused on the conversation.
Well, thank you everyone so much. This was our first one of the week. We'll have another one today at 2 o'clock. And then on Friday, we'll have 2 more to cover the last 2 regions for New Mexico.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah,
And
great turnout.
If you want to talk between now and 2, just let me know.
Yeah, we can do that. That sounds great. Mark, when you can go ahead and stop the recording. Or I can.